Continuing to read from A Mountain in Tibet from page 218. Chapter 13. Rinpoche. In 1995, I was formally appointed abbot of Samiling by my brother Akong and Tai Situ Rinpoche. I was honored and slightly amazed to find myself in this position. If you'd told me back in 1980, as I awaited the blessing of ordination from His Holiness the 16th Karmapa, that within 15 years I would be head of Samiling, I would have scoffed. I was a novice, just starting out on my spiritual path. And yet, in the intervening years, a total transformation had taken place in my mind and my heart. From now on, Akam was free to focus on his international humanitarian work, and I turned my attention back to the task of helping the many people who arrived at Samiling looking for guidance. There was a constant stream of lost and directionless folk arriving at our door. Many of them were suffering with addiction and mental health problems. In some cases, we really were the last refuge after their friends and family had withdrawn support. They would come to do some volunteering and be so moved by what they experienced that they wanted to stay on, to stabilize their minds. Often they would ask for an interview, and I would sit and listen as they poured their heart out to me. I had always felt a deep connection with these lost people. They reminded me of my younger self. I knew from experience that looking for fulfillment outside of ourselves, via our career, partner, family, social status, or hedonism, can suck us into a vortex of dissatisfaction and destructiveness. It is a source of great freedom to find peace, wisdom, and fulfillment within ourselves. Meditation had been my medicine, and I had no doubt it could help countless others. I began to think that an extended period of reflection and discipline would be beneficial for many of the people I talked with. The trouble was that ordination as a monk or nun did not feel like a realistic prospect. It was just too daunting. I already knew from my years as the Samiling retreat master that most Western people, however sincere, will struggle with going straight from being a curious beginner to doing a 3 or 4 year secluded retreat. They are full of enthusiasm, but have yet to develop either the experience of extended meditation or the faith that sustains it. Some of our long-term retreatants have gone on to commit to lifelong ordination, but many have become discouraged and abandoned the path, either before or after ordination. This led to feelings of failure, frustration, depression, and resentment. Surely there was a better way for all these people. The problem was that there was no tradition of what I began to think of as temporary ordination within Tibetan Buddhism. In Tibet, lifelong ordination is a way of life. And a significant chunk of the population are monks and nuns. But, of course, that is not the case in modern Europe. What if I could offer people a sort of beginner's ordination for a year? At the end of the year, people could either give their robes back with no sense of failure attached, or commit to another 2 or 3 years. I became really excited at this prospect. I also knew that I would have to act alone to make it happen. Anyone who was a tulku or a high lama would be unable to endorse such an unprecedented step, since they would need approval from His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others. But I was a nobody, and I really wanted to help. I had a certain amount of leverage, and I ran my own ship at Samiling. So I made the decision to try, and from the mid-90s onwards, I began to offer temporary ordination to men and women. The initial group was almost 100 people, who all took vows for a year, and then longer, if this worked out. Those were crazy times. I was always on the go, listening and advising, trying to help so many troubled minds to settle down so that they could help themselves. I became a bit of a father figure to many people. I encouraged them to face their negative habits and not kid themselves, to look at their issues honestly and begin to purify them using Buddhist practices. I would reflect back to them that nothing was intrinsically wrong with them. All their negative self-beliefs were simply untrue. In essence, each one of them was unflawed and whole. I then taught them how to practice compassion towards themselves and towards all those they blamed for their troubles, and eventually towards every single living being. And to my absolute joy, in many cases, it worked. In this very secure and safe context that we had created, people grew more stable. There was less shouting and more laughter, less grievance and more understanding. The other goal for me, aside from finding a framework for offering ongoing support, was to build up the Sangha, which is the ordained Buddhist community. Most Buddhist practitioners worldwide are lay people, and their role is very important. But in Buddhism, the Sangha are regarded as one of the three jewels, one of the sources of inspiration and refuge. They are the ones who keep the spirit of the Buddhist teachings, the Dharma, alive. So it's terribly important to have a stable and flourishing Sangha. It was a great joy for me that Samiling was soon full of monks and nuns who lived, volunteered, studied, and above all, practiced in our community. Many of them decided at the end of a year or 2 or 3 that they wished to return to mainstream society. They went back out into the world as more positive and mature people. Having found their own inner stability and peace, they were now able to offer some loving kindness and compassion to others. Some people did decide that they wanted to take lifelong ordination with a high Lama like Tai Situpa or Thrangu Rinpoche, and this too filled me with delight. Many of them have gone on to become stalwarts of the Samiling community. Gelang Tupten, for example, who became personal secretary to Akong, initially took 1-year ordination in one of the first groups. Temporary ordination has now been adopted by many Tibetan Buddhist lamas all over the world. When His Holiness the 17th Karmapa later endorsed it, my innovation received the highest blessing and is now part of our lineage in the West. The idea came out of my own lived experience of being miserable and directionless, tempted by superficial and external pleasures. My lack of status as a tulku allowed me first to have these experiences and then to try to create something new from them. I was a nobody in the hierarchy of Tibetan Buddhism, and this gave me an enormous amount of freedom to try things out. Many tulkus have told me that they envied me my opportunities. They admitted that they lacked experience of what ordinary people went through because they lived a life of privilege and status. I recognize that I have been very fortunate in this regard. To my mind, there could be no clearer example of the obstacles being turned into the path. Continuing from A Mountain in Tibet, from page 218. This is a new chapter, isn't it?
That's right, a new chapter, yes.
And it's building on something we're quite familiar with, is that the Rinpoches are always talking about making improvements all the time.
Yeah, so it's good. It's good. Lama actually taking on the role, you give it interviews and meeting all these people, and you find out their backgrounds and where they're coming from, and through that, he's getting better ideas how to help and improve them.
Yes.
Which is good. And the idea of the short ordination was a brilliant idea.
Never had happened before. It was quite unprecedented. So he was a pioneer.
It's time for new things to happen.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the tradition of Buddhism has always adjusted to new settings, hasn't it, as it's moved to new locations around the world. And so this was the opportunity of the combination of Buddhism and Western culture to work out a new balance and a new way of embracing the best in both worlds.
Yeah, some places are set in their old ways. They don't want to change. They want to keep things as they were, instead of changing with modern times, you know.
Yes.
But now that they're starting to wake up from that now, things are starting to change. And yes.
Well, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche had quite a broad basis for comparing the cultures, because he had been in privileged positions within the West and the East, and also been in positions where he was struggling or learning from challenges.
Yeah.
So it gave him a wide range, and this breadth of experience is what has informed what is leading towards his being more and more recognized as a key player and a very important part of his brother's activities.
And his own background helped him out there. He did when he was young.
Yes.
Gave him some
he knew what it was to struggle and be unhappy.
Gave him ideas, you know.
Yes.
So he actually had changed himself, so he knew how to go forward and changing other people.
That's the thing.
You know.
It was from his own personal experience, the authority of his own personal experience.
Always got to come from yourself first before you do it to others, you know.
Yes.
You know, you can't just say, make these changes without doing it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, but Lama Yeshe did it himself, so that made things all right.
Yes.
Which is quite good.
So all these years from a young child being told that his job was to assist his brother, he was becoming more and more capable of doing that as time went on, and assisting in more and more ways.
Yeah.
And finding his own natural style of being with people that was unique to him, as well as very much coming out of the tradition of compassion and loving kindness, and meeting people where they were, so that he could assist them and accompany them in their journey.
And it's good, with his idea that the short ordination, how it actually improved things. And some people did get better.
Yes.
And improved, and made some good improvements. As I say, they moved it into the world and were able to help when they went out into the world. So some of them wanted to come back and carry on with the ordination much longer, which was another brilliant thing.
Yes.
So when I said some people wanted to take full ordination, when Lama Yeshe was delighted. Just when they come up, I was delighted with him when he said he wanted all or nothing, you know, full ordination.
Yes, full ordination.
Yeah.
And this is a time of quite a lot of change and transformation within individuals, and also within the lineage and within Tibetan Buddhism, because you find that there are efforts to move things forward at all levels.
Yeah. So everything's always improving, everything's moving on, which is so. So I think that's a very, very good thing. It's, things developed and happened that way. And it's good, Lama Yeshe, good insight into things, you know. For doing it that the way he did it, give him good insight
Yes.
to what's going on with people. And that way he was able to help more. So that was very good.
And this chapter is also recognizing some of the freedoms that Lama Yeshe Rinpoche had by staying outside of the hierarchical designations and being not only a free spirit and a man who decides his destiny to some degree, but also one who can direct things forward because he's not bound by too many restrictions or too many conventions. Now he was taking full opportunity to make good use of what he calls being a nobody. He is not that at all, but that was the stance and position of which he could operate most skillfully in these contexts.
It's good. It's good with his strict rules he's had on by being a full-fledged monk, and people to balance that off with some freedom, which is we managed to do, which is quite good.
Yes.
It's good when that can happen to all the Sangha.
Why not?
Some keep their discipline with a bit of freedom to go along with it, to balance it. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if it's like that, it should be like that. You know.
All right.
Yeah. So this is a time for changes taking place.
And improvements are underway?
Yeah, Kamap is changing a lot of things now too, so everything's working in that direction.
Yes. As circumstances become more favorable,
yeah,
and conditions become more auspicious.
Yeah. Although some things would like to go quicker, but it's according to circumstances, it has to go slowly, you know.
Yes.
But anyway, the slow ones will eventually come.
Yes.
Come to fruit. Yes.
Patience.
Yeah. Patience is a virtue, yeah. Okie dokie.
Okie dokie.
Ah.